I call this meeting of the Siloam Springs Board of Adjustment to order. Roll call, please.
Song.
Here.
Montgomery. Here. Sally. Here. McKinney.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Renard.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Will you please join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You've all received minutes of the regular meeting on April the 11th, 2023 of the Board of Adjustments. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting on April the 11th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. First item on tonight's agenda is a driveway variance, BOA 23-03. Mr. Ben? And Ben, can we present all of these at one time, please?
Yes. Just one moment here. So, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is Ben Rhoads, Senior Planner. Let me get this to the screen there. You're considering several driveway setback variances for proposed townhomes. These are fourplex units located at the 18 to 1900 block of Azlin Place. And since this request is associated with two significant development permits, I'll also present on these as well. So you can see the full picture of what's proposed related to the variance requests and the project scope. The significant development permits are the first two items on the Planning Commission's development approvals on today's agenda, which will come up next after you review all the variances. The total project is for 5 buildings on 5 different lots in the Rosemead addition. Each of these buildings are identical in design and contain 4 individual dwellings, thus being classified as multifamily for each of the lots. The applicant has bundled these lots and these projects together into a single SDP application. However, the remainder lot, because it doesn't adjoin, is considered a separate application that would be considered as SD 2309, and that's because it's detached from the other ones. So just moving into the first slide here. So here you see the individual area maps for each of the variances, starting with BOA 2303 at the far left and then progressing to the right for each subsequent variance. You will note that the one of the lots is excluded. That's lot 10 at the very top, due to this one not being required for a driveway setback variance. Here you see the site plans included as part of the significant development permits. Again, the ones on the top, which are to the west, because north is facing to the right here, are part of SD 2307, and the lone project, which is detached, that's SD 2309. One notable feature is the proposed dumpster location, which I will circle that right there, which straddles lots 9 and 10. This was added by the request of staff to help reduce the number of roll carts needed at the end of the cul-de-sac, which will be very tight due to the limited lot frontage at that end of that cul-de-sac. So shifting back to the variance requests, this slide highlights the issues with the driveways. As you can see, they're designed to be individual, not shared drives, with each having access to the dwelling units from the street. While this will appear pretty much straightforward in terms of design concept, a driveway to each dwelling, it does present some challenges when applying the zoning code due to 2 specific factors. The first is multifamily units are required to use the collector street driveway spacing standards, and so that is regardless of what the street class is that's being impacted. So in this case, it's a local street but we're still using those collector street standards, and that's a code requirement. And then the second is that there is a code interpretation now that parking regulations are such that we are no longer considering parking in the unit's garages, but only on the drives themselves, and that each parking space has to have its own independent access to the street. So one vehicle is never blocking another vehicle on the driveway. And because we have observed that as being a problem in the past, which is why we're doing that now. You can possibly see these drives or the parking as shown in the light green, and I will circle some of these for you, but on the site plan, you'll see the light green right in front of each of the units. The long pieces here are each one of the units. And so they are showing the parking as required. The code is that you have 2 parking spaces for every dwelling unit. So getting into the particulars with the variances and themselves, what you're considering is our driveway setbacks from 3 primary objects. The first is a setback from an intersecting street. The second is setback from another driveway on the same side of the street. And the third is a setback from a driveway to the property line. For Lot 7, the first of the 4 variance requests, all 3 violations are indicated in all caps in the first page of the staff report. For Lots 8, 9, and 13, only the drive-to-drive setback and the drive-to-property line setback are in violation. And a side note, that dumpster pad that I pointed out earlier, because that's a shared drive access straddling the lot line, that's not applicable to the drive variances. So you're really just considering the driveways and the red boxes as I shown on the site plan there. So no, as I mentioned earlier, no variances are needed for Lot 10 because there's a single drive entrance, so that solves some of their problems. Furthermore, the code always allows at least 1 driveway, regardless of the spacing, for every lot or every platted lot, as long as there's, even if it's not in compliance. So the issue that we're coming at is with the other 4 lots, those are considered separate driveways. So you can't apply the single driveway rule to kind of solve that problem with the spacing. And so moving into the applicant's provide statement of hardship. As you're aware, when you're acting as the Board of Adjustment, you need to rule on if the proposed variance is unique to the property, not frequently occurring in the zone district. In other words, you want to make sure that what's being asked is related to something unusual about the property that gives the applicant a hardship compared to its peers on similar properties. In this case, what has been identified is the lack of width of the property compared to other similar type uses. And I would also add that the lack of lot depth is a contributing factor driving the need for the variances. For number 2, one thing you need to consider is that if the identified issue has existed for at least 15 years, or if not, that it was not caused by the applicant. In this case, the issue is the lots themselves, and they were platted in August of 2005, thus meeting the 15-year time test. Lastly, you need to consider if the granted variance will cause any damage to the neighborhood in terms of property values or generally quality of life of the neighborhood. So in staff's review, we believe that the applicant has a hardship as identified, and I will also explain that a little bit more in the next slide. So this is a slide that gives you an example of the neighborhood condition. And this is an example of an existing fourplex. This is not planned, so this is already there, that was built in the neighborhood. And this will illustrate some of staff's findings in terms of why these are now an issue now when they weren't when these other fourplexes were built. First off, you'll note the parking situation. So each of the garages represents a dwelling unit. So if the second car needed to park, they have 2 options, either park behind the first car or park on the street. So none of these options are ideal, and tandem parking tends to block the sidewalk, forcing pedestrians to walk on the street rather than the sidewalk. And I do live in this neighborhood, and I have definitely seen that. You can also see the limited space in front of the dwellings for on-street parking. Actually, and that's just because of the limited curb area. That's literally the curb area they have for on-street parking. So it just doesn't really work right there. Therefore, any new dwelling, we are requiring that there's at least 18 feet width for each dwelling unit to accommodate the 2 parking spaces. And so these drives that you see shown in the picture are only about 10 to 11 feet wide per dwelling unit. So the new drives are going to have to get substantially wider than what you're seeing in this photo. The second issue that's come about is that these buildings were constructed around 2008. Since that time, staff has considered 4-plex units as multifamily. We did not have that defined the same way back in '08. And as you know, calling these multifamily is significant not only for the approval process, but that they are required to follow those collector street standards now with the spacing of the driveways. So in a sense, this subdivision just was not built as R4 lots under our current standards, so there really is a limited space on meeting the setbacks required for driveways. Another thing to note is that most R4 lots are by orders of magnitudes much larger than these lots. These are more like suburban lots in a regular single-family subdivision. You know, the one right to the west of here, which is I think called the Siloam crossings, or the Sacred Creek crossing rather, that one is a considerably larger lot for R4. So flipping back over to just the general significant development side of things, here's just a sample of what the proposed structure will look like. You can see visually it's very similar to what you already see in the neighborhood, but of course with the wider driveways. And then here, as I would always show, is the proposed landscaping with some frontage trees that actually are limited due to the drives themselves. So the trees are going more on the sides and rear of the property. And here is a site view. So this is a site view specifically to the variances and not for the significant development. And of course, with the significant development, we are adding that last lot 10. I did include the addresses there as well, just to show you that last lot that's being considered for the significant development project. And then one other thing to note, if you guys have been out there, you might be wondering, well, how did this unit get constructed? That's because it's a triplex, and because a triplex is not considered multifamily, and therefore doesn't have the driveway standards and all the, so it just kind of creates a domino effect from there. So the applicant has indicated they want to do quadplexes, 4 units per building, not 3, which is why this is all before you today. So with that, staff is recommending approval of both the significant development permits, and we also acknowledge that there is a legitimate hardship for the variances. And one other note about that, they are 4 separate votes, so you have to go through each one by one. So with the significant developments, we do have some conditions. So for ST 2307, those are the ones on the west side, the western units. The applicant is required, needs to acquire the needed driveway variances prior to building permit. They need to provide a separate photometric plan for the lighting. We'll also get that as part of the building permit application. Due to the ongoing shortage in transformers, we're still asking developers to submit standard city development agreement prior to building permit issuance. And then the next 2 are on drainage. Number 4 is on the needed and is needed on updating a drainage analysis for off-site flows. And the final one requires that the applicant add a note, plan note on the perimeter drainage and grading improvements. It should also be noted that the requirements for off-site detention have been waived based off of the original design of the subdivision. The intention was never to require ponds on each single lot of this development. So for ST 2309, that's the next one, the single one on the east right on that side right there. Those conditions are just the first three that I mentioned for ST 2307, not the drainage ones, but the first three. So with that, we are available for any questions, first initially on just the variances, and then after that, when the Planning Commission is called to order, we will be happy to answer your questions on the significant development permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. First off, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the variance request that is before the Board of Adjustment? Commissioners, do you have questions or concerns about the request for variance that is on the Board of Adjustments itinerary or agenda? Hearing that, I'll entertain a motion on driveway variance BOA 23-03.
I'd move approval, BOA 23-03.
I have a motion to approve driveway variance BOA 2303. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Driveway variance BOA 2303 is approved. I will entertain a motion on driveway variance BOA 23-04.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve BOA 23-04.
I have a motion to approve driveway variance BOA 23-04. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for BOA 2304. Roll call, please.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
Driveway variance BOA 2304 is approved. I will now entertain a motion on driveway variance BOA 2305.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve driveway variance BOA 2305.
I have a motion to approve driveway variance BOA 2305. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for driveway variance BOA 2305. Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Driveway variance BOA 2305 is approved. I will now entertain a motion for driveway variance BOA 2306.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve driveway variance BOA 2306.
I have a motion to approve driveway variance BOA 2306. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve driveway variance BOA 2306. Roll call, please.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Driveway variance BOA 2306 is approved. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion in several seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned with the Board of Adjustments. I call to order this City of Siloam Springs Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Song,
Here.
Montgomery,
Here.
Sally,
Here.
McKinney,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Bernard,
Here.
Williams.
Here.
You've also received minutes of the meeting of April 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Our first item for discussion that we have already heard the comments on it is Significant Development Permit SD 2307. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address Significant Development Permit SD 2307? Hearing none from the audience, commissioners, do you have comments, questions, or concerns for staff?
My only question is for Kevin. Can you give a little insight on the, should get your mic up there, on the drainage there and just the thought process there?
Yes, thank you. Kevin Morris, City Engineer. Thank you, Commissioner. So the drainage manual gives the opportunity for the Planning Commission to waive requirements from the manual if there are sufficient reasons to do so. Staff feels that with the code change that Ben mentioned, where this is now a multifamily significant development, had this come through when this subdivision was platted, it would not have required individual detention for each significant development. Since that's a new requirement, we felt that that was kind of in the spirit of this development, since it was zoned R4 when it was platted, and from that standpoint, and so we were in favor of waiving the detention requirement.
Helpful, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners on the Significant Developed SD 2307?
I have a question for Ben, please. Ben, so on the rest of Azlin there, I think they use the blue trash cans, right? And so we're going to use a dumpster for for the new 20 units, is that right?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Sorry, technical difficulty. So yes, the last 8 units, the one at the very end of the cul-de-sac and then the one next to it, will have that shared dumpster, but then the rest of them will have the roll carts. Does that make sense? So, and that's just because of how congested it gets at the you're not having a lot of curb area to roll your cart to,
Right.
because you're sharing with 4 other families or 3 other families in a limited space. So we just wanted to do a dumpster between those 2 lots to kind of fix that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other commissioners got concerns with this development? Hearing no concerns, I will entertain a motion to approve Significant Development Permit SD 2307.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve Significant Development Permit SD 2307.
I have a motion to approve SD 2307. Katie, could you supplement that with the staff?
Yes, I could do that better. Okay, subject to the conditions and recommendations of the staff.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
have a motion to approve SD 2307, subject to the 5 conditions listed by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2307, subject to the conditions listed by staff. Roll call, please.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Renard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
SD 2307 is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on June the 6th, 2023. Next item on our agenda, Significant Development Permit SD 2309. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address Development 2309? This concerns the single unit on the screen. Board, do you have any concerns or recommendations or questions? Commissioners, I'm sorry. Hearing no concerns or questions from commissioners, I will entertain a motion to approve SD 2309.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve SD 2309, subject to staff recommendations.
I have a motion to approve SD 2309, subject to the three recommendations by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2309. Roll call, please.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
SD 2309 is approved, and it will go before the Board of Directors on June the 6th, 2023. Next item on our agenda is Significant Development 2306, which was tabled at the April 11th, 2023 Planning Commission. Ms. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan Thomas, Planner 1. Oops, sorry. Go back. This is a significant development permit request to construct a 22,126 square foot assembly building with associated parking areas. This project is located at 1611 Cherry Whitlock Drive. It should be noted that this is a new revision of a previously approved significant development, which has now expired. On the screen is a zoomed out version of the site plan so you can see the overall site. The expansion will be utilizing the existing detention pond and rerouting the offsite drainage from the north around the detention pond. And this is a more zoomed in version of the site plan so you can see where the actual site is. The light gray area is the proposed site for the significant development, and the white parking areas are the existing parking for the site. This will be the new assembly building here. And to the east of the assembly building is the existing structure. That structure will be transitioned into an office and classroom space and will no longer be used for assembly use. They're proposing to construct a drive to the west of the existing drive. This is the existing drive, and this is the proposed right in and right out only drive that will come through with this proposal. Additionally, they will be tying in the existing sidewalk along Cherry Whitlock to the development using a sidewalk around here that will connect here to the development. As a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to pay a fee in lieu for the sidewalk for North Lincoln Street prior to building permit issuance. This proposal is exceeding the minimum parking required, and the proposed parking areas will tie into the existing site. And this is the landscape plan for the development. They will be providing interior parking lot landscaping as well as buffers along the site. And this is the rendering of the proposed assembly structure, so you guys can see what that will look like. And then this is the overall site view of the property. You can see that the existing church is there as well as the existing parking, and you can see where that proposed drive will be at. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 6 needed conditions. The first is related to the need to file drainage and utility easements via separate instrument as directed by the city engineer prior to certificate of occupancy issuance. Second is regarding the need for an updated drainage analysis for the drainage improvements from the detention basin to the right-of-way of Highway 264 and North Lincoln Street. This shall be approved by the city engineer prior to building permit issuance. Third, the applicant will be required to show drainage improvements from the detention basin outlet to the right-of-way of Highway 264 and North Lincoln Street on the construction plan set prior to building permit issuance. Fourth, the applicant will be required to submit a photometric plan that complies with exterior parking lot lighting standards prior to building permit issuance. Fifth, the applicant will be required to pay a sidewalk fee in lieu for the sidewalk along North Lincoln Street prior to building permit issuance. And finally, the applicant shall add a note to the plan stating, the detention pond outlet structure and all perimeter drainage grading improvements shall be completed prior to beginning work on mass grading or improvements within the site. This note is to ensure that construction scheduling does not burden the surrounding property owners. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this significant development 2306 located 1611 Cherry Whitlock? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Yes, sir. Ron Homeyer, Civil Engineering, 701 South Mount Olive Street. Don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but Staff, we asked staff to waive the sidewalk fee in lieu along Lincoln Street, but they said because it had been approved with the previous approval, it had to be a condition of this approval. The previous approval included a driveway that went out to Lincoln Street, so it kind of made sense to require the sidewalk. But now am I too tall for your microphone? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you're a little too tall, and I don't know, we can hear you fine, but I don't know if the recording can pick it up.
So anyway, the previous approval included a drive from behind the church out to Lincoln Street, and that kind of made sense to require a sidewalk along Lincoln at the time, and that was prior to the overpass being completed. But now that, we no longer are proposing a driveway over to Lincoln Street, and it's more than 550 feet away from the new site, we would like to request that condition be waived at this time. And then secondly, the drainage. Unfortunately, the engineer and I don't agree and don't see eye to eye on that requirement of the church having to do drainage improvements downstream of the detention basin over to the Lincoln Street right-of-way. We're not increasing the flow in any way. This area has been a drainage problem in the past, and I know that a drainage complaint is a big driver of the staff's recommendation for the condition. But seeing and knowing the history of all that's going on out there with the flooding in Gabriel Park and all the attempts the city has made through the years to try and alleviate that problem, and all the good faith efforts the church has provided in assisting the city in trying to make those improvements, it just is rubbing me in particular wrong that the church is now being required to make improvements the city has chosen not to do for the last 10 years or more. So would respectfully request that condition also be removed. So anyway, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Ron. City engineer, do you want to speak to that, or are you just, it's up to you?
First, to address the sidewalk, so typically with significant development, sidewalk is required along all the frontage, regardless of what may have been included previously. Since it is all one lot, a significant development even on the west portion of the lot, by our code, drives the requirements around all the frontage. That would be, of course, at your pleasure to remove if you disagreed with that requirement. To speak to the drainage a little bit, the ditch that's there today was put in with the city's help to help the church drain off that east lot. And so as kind of a trade-off with some of the improvements that were done to the subdivision to the north, that ditch was not designed to carry the 100-year flow. It was simply designed to help the area drain dry following a rain event, not keep up with the drainage during a rain event. The current ditch that's there today overflows in the 100-year storm, and so what's there is not adequate. There are options within our drainage manual for developers to partner with the city for off-site drainage improvements. And this is a little bit of a gray area since it would be within the site itself, but that's certainly an option. So, but staff is available for any questions.
I need to ask for my clarification on the sidewalks. I know now that there's a sidewalk along Cherry Whitlock. It goes in front of the property all the way around, and it goes north on Lincoln Street up almost to the next business there. Is that not that's not the sidewalk you're talking about?
The portion that they would be paying the fee in lieu for would be from where that sidewalk stops today to the boundary line for this property. So before that, when they had come through Lincoln, or Cherry Whitlock had not been widened and that sidewalk wasn't there, so they were responsible for the full amount. And now it would just be that remainder, whatever that distance is. I don't have that in front of me.
From the existing sidewalk to the property line to the
Property
north.
line, correct.
Commissioners?
I have a couple of questions for Kevin. Kevin, you said that the city helped them with that ditch at one point. How long ago was that? Do you know?
2016, I believe, so when this project came through the first time. There used to be a house at that corner on the northwest corner of Sherry Whitlock and Lincoln that flooded regularly. I believe it was owned by the church, I don't recall, but when that area overflows, it floods south kind of across that whole property. And so to help alleviate that in some way, the city staked out a ditch that would drain from their property where the existing ditch was to the Lincoln Street ditch that's there already.
And just for clarification for me, I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure. I know obviously they own the property to the west of their current building. They own the property east of the building to Lincoln Street as well, all of that we see?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Commissioners, do you have any other comments or questions of either the engineer or staff?
I have a question for Kevin as well. The existing drainage ditch coming out of the detention pond, is that on their property as well?
Correct.
Thank you.
Questions? I see that. Go for it.
So I don't remember exactly, but I know in the last couple of years, we talked about this also, right? And I think that was before you were here, Kevin, if I remember right. I know Mr. Homeyer was here for that. And I know we discussed drainage and drainage issues, and I feel like we came together and had an agreement with the church at that time on us working together with them on that drainage issue. I don't know if
the previous time this came through, these two conditions were on here word for word from the previous city engineer. These conditions were passed at the planning commission level, but then removed by the board with the thought that the city would help with some of this drainage.
And that was since the city helped the time before. So the city helped in 2016 with drainage.
Correct.
And so it's come before us again, and we talked about it, and the board removed it after that, saying that they thought that the city would help again.
Correct.
But we're not including that this time?
I've re-included the
That
condition.
we will help?
I think part of the issue as well is if we were to agree to help today, there's no design to agree to. And so that's part of what I'm asking to be shown, regardless of whether the church is fully responsible or half responsible or the city takes it. There's no agreed upon design that contains that water for the city to agree to.
If I understand this correct, if we approve this with these two conditions on there, number 5 and number 6, if the board so chooses to remove them, they can do that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And that would be conditions 2 and 3. I apologize.
Okay, I understand my mistake. I said 5 and 6, but I understand 2 and 3. Okay, commissioners, do we have any other concerns, questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on significant development permit 2306. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve significant development 2306 with conditions as stated by the city staff.
I have a motion to approve SD 2306 with the conditions as stated by staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2306. Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney.
I think I'm a no. I'd like to see the city work with the developer on this one. So with all the recommendations, I'm a no.
Motion is approved with one objection. SD 2306 will go to the Board of Directors on June 6, 2023. Next item on the agenda is significant development permit SD 2310. Megan.
Bring it back down to my level. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan Thomas, Planner 1. This is a significant development permit request to construct a 42,366 square foot expansion to the existing club car wash located at 2301 East Main Street. The expansion will only be paving to allow for 22 new vacuum bays as well as a proposed drive onto Ravenwood Plaza. No new structures are proposed with this request. Shown to the left on the screen is the existing site conditions, and shown to the right is the proposed expansion. As you can see, the only changes to be made is additional paving to the east of the existing structure to allow for the additional vacuum bay areas, as well as a new drive shown to the north of the site. The proposed drive does meet the minimum C2 driveway standards. Additionally, they will be constructing a sidewalk along Ravenwood Plaza that will tie into the development. You can see that tie-in over here. This is the landscape plan for the proposed expansion. As you can see, they are providing landscaping on all sides of the site. And this is the overall site view of the property. The proposed drive will align with this existing drive for Planet Fitness. And this dumpster shown here in the southeast corner of the site will be relocated to the northeast corner of the site to allow for the vacuum bays to go in there. Staff is recommending approval of this request with no needed conditions, and staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this significant development 2310? Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, do you have questions or concern about the significant development 2310?
Kevin, the drainage on this development, I know originally when there was going to be a restaurant there, they were talking about some semi-permeable concrete base that allowed for water to not run off as much. There's not a retention of any kind that I can see? What's the plan on this? Where does this all go now that they're making it basically all concrete or asphalt?
Correct, yes. So this will drain south and west to the Main Street detention pond. It's just kind of offside at that bottom left corner. So, and it's within that functional area.
Okay, so it's not going to go
so
backwards.
No on-site
then.
detention. That's
Okay.
correct.
Good question. Hearing no further questions, I will entertain a motion for SD 2310.
I'd move approval, SD 2310.
I have a motion to approve significant development permit SD 2310. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2310. Roll call, please.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes, this permit will go through the Board of Directors on June the 6th, 2023. Next item on your agenda, I believe everybody's been waiting breathlessly for, is Significant Development Permit SD 2311. Rhoads.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Commission. So before you is a revision of a previously approved plan from earlier this year for the Plasma Center. This is at 1993 Highway 412 East. Due to miscommunication with the applicant, the incorrect address was added to the plans in the staff report showing 1995. That is actually 1993. And this will be corrected in the documentation, including the building plans going forward. So everything that the board sees will be the correct address. As a reminder, the original submittal was for a 6,500 square foot quasi-medical center for the collection of blood plasma. The change has triggered this re-review is the relocation of the detention basin, which is over 10% of the overall site layout, which means these have to then come back before you for formal re-review. So here is the original site plan as approved. Some areas of note are the larger islands to the south and considered proposed work off property within the shared access easement, particularly this drive. Bring your attention to that. So what's changed now is they're essentially doing less work off property in that shared access easement due to probably a miscommunication between the developer and the landowner as far as what was allowed in that access easement. So here is the update. I've kind of combined slides here to show just the general site plan as well as landscaping. So on the left side, you see the updated site plan with the detention area. So that's now moved over to the top right corner. And the important thing to understand with this is that no changes are proposed to the building or parking areas. The changes are really more related to the layout of the island and the detention basin. And on the right side image, you see the proposed landscaping plan, which is more or less what it was previously approved. Here is just again the site plan once more, just with a better view showing in highlighted red boxes the areas that are changing. The key takeaway here is just the minimal work is proposed now in the shared access easement and the detention basin being shifted off to the northeast. The area was previously a green space island where that detention was going, so that lot coverage and layout is pretty much identical to the original proposal. Engineering has approved the relocation of the pond and the needed drainage pipes. And here you see the elevation. Again, this is the same building as before. We're just including it because it's a new review for you, so we're just going to include that. And then finally, here is the property looking to the north. Staff report kept the previous condition relating to the off-site drainage easement, which is still needed. However, the previous condition on the off-site construction easement has been expunged with the resubmission as it is no longer needed. Staff is recommending approval of the application with the stated drainage condition, and we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have anyone from the audience that wishes to address this permit SD 2311? Please come up, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Willy Bergstold. I'm the owner of the property to the east and to the south of this development.
Your address, please.
My address is 1993, I think, Highway 112. Okay. So the actual part of the property on the south is where their easement is for this new development. And like the last approved plan a lot better, it had an extra drainage pipe on the southeast side of the property, going out to 412 or actually to the detention pond, and that's no longer there. And also improvements to the driveway and all that for that entrance is basically just paving a little bit. I'm not quite sure why that has been changed. Before there was curbs on both sides of that entrance. Now there's just on one side. And probably the bigger issue is that the drainage from the church to the north goes basically into this property that gets developed on my property. And now, since this property is going to get raised a little, think about 2 feet or so elevation change, nothing will flow through that property anymore. It will all flow on my property and then somewhere else. And that's the reason they probably planned an extra drainage pipe there, which is now missing. So and I'm also not quite sure on the new plan. It doesn't even has arrows going out to the 412. Is there no official driveway anymore, or can you see that back there?
Mhm.
If you bring up the last picture, maybe with the plan, you can see it a little more exact. So it's basically just connects their driveways to the south and to the access beam together. That's about it. I'm not quite sure what they try to do here.
We'll see if
This
we can
point.
get you some. We'll see if we can get you some answers.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Ben, can you address that by any chance on the driveways?
Sure. They're only responsible for doing the work within their actual property boundaries. That shared driveway is just an existing shared access, and so I believe they were just wanting to only do work within their own property as much as they could. I mean, there's some instances where maybe the islands will bump a little bit over into that access easement, but I don't believe that
But
they're
this
required to do it. Sorry?
This property does have egress and ingress from 412, right?
Correct, yes.
Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address this significant development?
Yes, sir. How are you? My name is Chris Stretz. I live in Fayetteville. I'm here to represent UGC, the United Global Development Corporation that's building this facility. So
Could
if
you
you had any
please,
questions.
for the record, where they can give us your address for the record?
Sure, yes. Chris Stretz, 1704 South Sinclair Avenue, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to give a chance to, if you had any questions for me, I can do my best to see what I can do for you.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for the development? You're the developer, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, if we have any, we will
Thank
call
you.
you up. Thank you. Is there anyone from the audience now that would like to address this? Okay, hearing none, commissioners, it's your turn. And I know you've got a bunch.
Kevin, could you address the drainage question?
Yes, so the original proposal had a pipe at the corner of their extension for the drive. Since they're no longer extending the drive, that pipe is not being added.
You got a laser pointer or something? Can you this would be helpful if I could see it.
I apologize. Kevin Moore, city engineer. So this eastern drive extension is no longer being constructed. Here that been circled. And then this pipe won't be constructed with the new plan. So the new plan doesn't extend far enough east to change the flows coming from off-site here from the church. You can see their flume up here. So this detention pond in the northeast corner will be set down to catch the flows running adjacent to the alley. There's an alley running east and west on the north side of the building. That detention pond will be set to capture those, and then the off-site drainage will proceed as it does today.
You're not redirecting any water back to the east.
Correct.
You're taking it in and moving it to the west.
Thank you.
Kevin, from that sign up there, get your pointer. And the water coming off the church.
Right, right. So that water comes off. There's a concrete flume here, and it comes off. And this old building pad was elevated enough that this water stayed on the east side,
Okay.
more or less. And this area is really flat, but the water would make its way south. And then there's a pipe that comes across this driveway south of that access easement, and that pipe will stay where it is today.
Okay,
So, but this area drains, and it also receives water from the east from Eastgate subdivision.
Okay. So, but the water coming off of the church there, now you've got a retention pond up next to where the church is at, right?
Yes, and I think this is a little bit deceptive. So the site box, I think, extends further east than their actual site improvements. So you can see here, this is that flume I pointed out right here. And so they're staying west of that discharge point. And I believe that the site overview goes a little east of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any other? Questions, concern? Hearing no other questions and concerns, I will entertain a motion on significant development permit SD 2311.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve SD 23-11 significant development permit, subject to the listed condition.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2311. Roll call, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on June the 6th, 2023. Okay, next item on the agenda is preliminary plat permit, PP 2302. Ms. Megan, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan Thomas, Planner 1. This is a preliminary plat permit request to establish the Oak Brook Addition, creating 85 single-family lots. This project is located at 3095 North Mount Olive Street. There is an associated annexation request to annex the property in as R2 residential medium. This annexation request will be heard at the June 6th Board of Directors meeting. On the screen is the plat for the proposed addition. As you can see, the proposal provides a much-needed connection to Highway 43, offering additional access to the surrounding subdivisions. The proposal also will connect to Pittsville Street here, which connects to the existing Autumn Glen subdivision to the east. As a condition of approval, the Board of Directors must grant a waiver for the block links between North Cheney Street and North Dagan Street. That's these two streets here. The reasoning for the waiver is due to the minimum block length requirement of 400 feet. Due to the size and shape of the lot, they are requesting shorter block lengths of 370.5 feet. This waiver would allow for houses along the perimeter and interior of the site as shown on this plat. And this is the subdivision regulations for R2 zoning districts. Please note that there was a typographical error in your staff report for this project. The correct lot width is 63.06 feet and greater. My apologies for that oversight. This proposal is exceeding the minimum lot dimension requirements for R2 zoning districts. The proposal is exceeding the minimum lot surface area by 33 square feet and is exceeding the minimum lot width by 3 feet. Additionally, all proposed lots are served by proposed sanitary sewer. Staff finds no reasonable causes that the proposed development would specifically interfere with the neighbors' reasonable peace and enjoyment of their properties. The subject proposal is 3.08 units per acre, which falls 2.92 units below the maximum density permitted within R2 zoning districts. Traffic will increase by a small amount, approximately 602 vehicles per day. However, this increase is not expected to interfere with the neighboring quality of life standards. The future land use is calling for Neighborhoods 1. The Neighborhoods 1 designation is primarily intended for single-family residential housing, ranging from 2 to 6 units per acre. The proposal is 3.08 units per acre. Therefore, this proposal is in line with the future land use plan and is compatible with the context of its location and character of the surrounding existing and planned neighborhoods. Staff finds no aspects of the proposal which would create a burden of the present future land uses of the neighboring properties. The proposed lots are sized similarly to the existing Autumn Glen subdivision to the east of the site. The proposal is adequately supported by infrastructure as they are proposing to tie into the existing water and sewer lines that run along Highway 43 and west of the property, and electric services are available. Staff has found no flaws with the proposal that would constitute unsound planning. The lots meet all city standards for health with all available infrastructure either present or proposed on the property. The extension of the Pittsfield Drive to Highway 43 Mount Olive will improve traffic flow in the area and will provide a much needed connection to Mount Olive from the existing Heritage Ranch and Autumn Glen subdivisions. The proposal will also promote favorable economic conditions by providing additional housing options for individuals and families moving to the community. Staff has received 5 letters concerning this proposal, some of which were in opposition. Those letters have been provided to you and will be included with the board items for this project. Oh, actually, sorry. For some reason, it just skipped everything over there. Okay. So we went over that. So I'll let Kevin speak to the street stuff real quick before we get into the conditions.
Perfect timing, Kevin.
Thank you. Kevin Moore, City Engineer. Carl Street's a major local with 5,000 vehicles a day. Current traffic counts of 1,700 plus Heritage Ranch subdivision, bring us up to a little over 3,000 vehicles a day. Mount Olive is a minor arterial with a future traffic load of 22,000 vehicles a day and a current traffic count of 4,000. This 4,500 vehicles a day includes Carley Crossing, which more or less directly accesses Highway 43. These 85 new lots will generate an additional 813 trips a day, but the improvements to connections in the area should largely offset that increase. Here you see the drainage through the area. There's a high point well to the east of all this, and then a portion of this is floodplain, including what crosses the property. That will have an impact on the finished floor elevations, but that doesn't necessarily prevent the developer from doing any of the work they're proposing. Like I said, it's a large drainage area. This encompasses several hundred acres. And so because of the size of this and because of the detention ponds throughout Lawless Ranch, Heritage Ranch, some of those other subdivisions, they're actually not proposing detention for this subdivision to allow the water out more quickly before the rest of the peak kind of catches up in that stream bed. And so it would actually be detrimental for the developer to detain as part of this proposal, and so they're showing this proposal without detention. Here you have the existing and proposed drainage areas just within the site. They're maintaining the existing drainage off of Pittsfield Drive up through the site and then back down through and across Highway 43. And then here's an aerial facing north of the site, and I'll let Megan speak to conditions of approval. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Figured out what happened. I stapled it the wrong way. Sorry. Okay. So this is the overall site view of the property. Outlined in blue is the proposed preliminary plat, and outlined in red is the annexation area. You can see that they're taking in some areas that are not included in this preliminary plat. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 5 needed conditions. The first condition is pertaining to the need for the applicant to confirm adequate site distance is available for the proposed intersection onto Highway 43. Staff is concerned that the hill north of Oak Brook Drive intersection would obscure Southbound traffic on Highway 43. Additional details is needed to verify that TO standards are met at this intersection. The second is related to the need for an updated drainage report as necessary to reflect changes in the final construction plans. Third is regarding the required annexation of the subject property into the city of Siloam Springs and request to apply the R2 zone for the proposed lots prior to construction on the property. Fourth, the applicant will be required to execute the development agreement for Oak Brook subdivision prior to construction. Finally, the Board of Directors shall grant a waiver on the block length between North Cheney Street and North Dagan Street prior to construction of the subject property. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, first off, is there anyone from the audience that would like to address PP 2302? Please come to the microphone, state your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is John Guffey. I live at 3030 North Mount Olive. My house is in the city limits, and it is...
Mr. Guthrie, can you pull the microphone? We can hear you, but I'm not sure the recording can pick it up.
John Guffey, 3030 North Mount Olive. My house is on the west side of Highway 43 in the city limits, okay? And where this addition is going to have egress onto Highway 43 is about 30 yards north of my property line. So as Kevin just mentioned, the drainage from all of this property, it comes right through my backyard. 11 years ago, when we moved into that property, that drainage across my backyard was minimal. After they built Autumn Glen, that drainage through my backyard has tripled. So I'm concerned that another addition is even going to make it increase more. Now, as that drainage goes southwest across my property, it ends up in the corner down, I don't know how to describe it to you. There's 4 properties that meet together. The 5 acres next to mine, the house behind mine, and Sue Johnson's property all come together in that back corner. And there's a huge log jam back there now. And through the current drainage brings in all kinds of limbs, leaves, and other debris that all ends up in that log jam. Well, a lot of it gets caught in my property on its way across. But it all ends up in that log jam, and as that increases, then the flooding increases in my backyard. And there have been times when I have seen, on a good rain, probably 60 feet of water in the lower part of my backyard on either side of the drainage through there. So that's really my primary concern. So as they pointed out, the drainage from this addition is going to go into a wooded area, which is going to pick up more and carry all that back through my backyard. So I would appreciate it if the board would take that into consideration before they approve this project. I'd be glad to invite any of you, all of you, to come out and see it firsthand.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to come up? Please state your name and your address.
My name is Missy Morris, and I live at 2951 North Mount Olive or 1951 North Dogwood. I have 2 addresses, have had for 30 years. I've lived in my house for 35 years. I've always enjoyed the cattle that have always been in that field that they're planning on putting all these houses in. To be honest, I would love to see cattle back there, but I know that that's not progress, and that's probably not going to happen. So I am just asking that Siloam has lots of housing additions, and I'd like for you to consider that maybe this would be the place, because it's a large piece of property and it's a beautiful piece of property, that maybe this would be the place that we put in higher level of homes, maybe a gated community, maybe something with bigger homes. I know that there are a lot of up and coming young people in Siloam, and the first thing that they always say when they're looking for a new home is that they want something with a little bit more property. They don't want to live in a big neighborhood. They would like something with, and they're young, you know, professional people that live here in Siloam, and I know that there are a lot of them that are always, they're looking maybe a half an acre, maybe an acre of property. It still be profitable for the people that are developing it, but also make it, we don't have a gated community in Siloam, and maybe that would be something that people would enjoy. I know that, you know, we're always looking to house everybody, but I think that Siloam is ready for an addition that is a little bit more high-end and maybe a little nicer than what some of the other housing additions offer for a different group of people. And I also would like to ask that, you know, my property line is right there. I mean, the houses are going to be right on the other side of my fence, and I own that 5 acres right the first, as you come around the corner there. And I would love to have a berm or some kind of professional planning and a fence. I'm concerned about all the trash. I'm concerned about the noise, but I would just like for it to be, if it's going to happen, I would like for it to be an addition to my property rather than something that I've worked hard. I've lived there a long time, and I don't want my property value to go down. And I really think that this is the time to maybe consider something a little bit more upscale for Siloam Springs. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Marilyn Holiday, North Carl, 2100 North Carl. If you look at it's not that plan, but the paper plan, I live on North Carl, about 6 houses in from Mount Olive, and that driveway that's going to go into this addition is just 3 houses from my house. My house is a 3-bedroom house, and then beyond that driveway are 4-bedroom houses. And I just think that driveway is not sufficient enough for all these houses that are coming in here. I think there should be another entrance. And I also think that, I agree with Missy that maybe these houses need to be a little farther apart and to be able to enjoy the land there. Because right now I look at the field that's behind me. Another concern I have that I wrote a report in about was there's a hedgerow right behind my house that has mature trees, and I would hate for all of that to be cut down just to build a house. Those are my 2 concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Additional thing real quick.
Okay, Mr. Guthrie.
John
real
Guffey,
quick.
3030 North Mount Olive. My one additional request is for the speed limit on Highway 43. As traffic is moving past the swimming pool, turned west on 43, coming over the hill at Carl Street, the speed limit goes from 45 to 50. Cars are accelerating coming over that hill. So you have the existing traffic from Autumn Glen coming out there plus additional. Okay, but then around the curve, as many cars coming around that curve accelerate through that long straightaway. And we have diesel trucks, and we have motorcycles, and we have 18-wheelers that come blazing through there. So my request, with the additional housing coming in further north of us, my additional request would be to consider changing the speed limit out another mile or so or 2 for safety reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Please state your name and address. I can't get my timer work, but you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Sempek. I'm the homeowner at 2203 North Carl Street.
We've seen a significant increase in traffic in that area due to Heritage Ranch 3, which pretty much doubled the volume of homes for the Heritage Ranch subdivision with smaller lots and lesser homes. We've seen significant traffic coming from the north on all of those areas that are brand new above Lawless, north of Lawless. The area behind my home was a leaching floodplain. Basically, the water from Don Hill came through the field, leached there. We had standing water most of the time in the summer. That drains at Pittsfield. I'm at the corner of Pittsfield and North Carl. We are the east house right by the two holding ponds, or drainage ponds there. I see significant flooding now in my backyard that has not been addressed. I've sent video, still photo. I've had individuals from the city come out and look. The stitching from the construction area itself overflowed into our yard, all the homes on that side. Across the street, which boundaries that preliminary plat, every one of those homes has flooding problems in their backyards that have not been addressed. The traffic that's going to come out on Pittsfield, that will be the path of least resistance, as is the Lawless area, as is the area behind our homes. The only place they have to go is North Carl. And if they're closer to North Carl to come through that area and take Pittsfield and then turn right on North Carl, which has them going south, we're going to see even that much more traffic. 85 houses, you're talking 170 cars. If there's 2 cars, which is the average family, coming from that neighborhood. And, you know, my concern is the flooding issues haven't been addressed in our current neighborhood. What are they going to do with that when that's the lower part of that whole area? All of those upper areas tear down and drain into that. I've never seen more water in our retention or our flood pond than I have since they started that complex behind us. That drains into those retention areas, and that flows through that creek that's on the west side of Carl at Pittsfield and north of Pittsfield, and flows into that area. That whole area in there has standing water in it most of the time, especially after it rains. It stands tall, and I'm talking 6 to 8 inches in my backyard, a foot in my neighbor's yard, and 6 to 8 inches to a foot in the yards across the street from me. The traffic and those issues are a concern with another complex like that in the area. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Are there anyone else from the audience who has not already spoken who would like to speak on this issue? Okay, commissioners, I see you're taking notes and making thoughts. Who wants to go first?
Just a clarification. Kevin, do we control the speed limit as a city?
Not on that street. So that is RDOT, and we do plan to ask for them to lower the speed limit from Carly Crossing south now that our city limits have extended out, but that's ultimately not the city's
But this is the
decision.
county.
I'm sorry?
This is the county, Benton County?
RDOT, the State Highway
yeah,
Department.
Okay, but you're going to ask to change. Okay, thank you.
But we can request a specific mile an hour, but they set their speed limits by doing speed studies and then setting the speed limit to near the average speed that they're seeing. So it's in some cases very difficult to get a speed reduction.
Siloam Springs, pardon me. If it's not posted in a residential area, is it 25 miles an hour? Is that the rule in the city? Sir, come up and address the... I'm sorry. Again, just talking about the speed limit. Again, my name is Jeffrey Sempek at 2203 North Carl Street. Okay. And your question is, if it's not posted, what is the speed limit? Yes, sir. Is it 25 miles an hour? 20 miles an hour? Jay, do you have I think it's 30, isn't it? If it's not posted? If it's not posted in a residential area.
I believe 30 is correct. I don't have that in front of me, but yes, I believe 30 is correct.
Okay. Huge problem with the speeding, running the stop sign at the street. Thank you. Commissioners, we have other comments and questions. Katie, I know you've got some.
Well, I am concerned with what I'm hearing from existing homeowners who have water in their backyards already. Now, I heard what we've said, and I trust the staff to give due diligence when they study this. But can we address these issues, and can we look at what's already happening? Has there been some action already taken to try to alleviate existing conditions when it's rainy and wet?
Yes, that's correct. So I've met with the Simpex several times. The drainage channel, or there's not a drainage channel there. The developer has added a small ditch north and south between phase 2 and phase 3. I've not been able to see that perform since that ditch was placed. Some of the other issues with the overflowing silt fence and things like that, those were addressed as they were brought to staff. We've had them remove silt fence in certain areas that were holding back the water, things like that. And then as water was coming down Cattleman Lane, I believe it is, that cul-de-sac, it was actually hopping the curb, which should no longer be an issue as those houses are going in and being built up.
And when they plant grass and trees start to grow, that helps a lot with the erosion, I understand. But during the construction time, when it's really always bulldozed down to bare ground, there's just a lot more runoff. And do you think some of that will moderate as landscaping is planted and carried out?
Based on what I'm seeing, I believe so. So the combination of final grading as building pads are elevated, and then grass and things like that, because you're absolutely right. When it's bare, that water is that's typically kind of the worst case during development. And that's when the Simpex were bringing those issues to staff, is when that site was largely bare and the streets were being constructed.
But we are addressing it, and Mr. Simpak knows that that's happening.
Real quick, sir. This is Commissioner's time, but
Thank you.
allow you.
It has not been addressed. We were told in the beginning that there would be a water conveyance in a line running north to south between North Carl Street and the Phase 3. That just went away. The little ditch was just an excavator digging about a 5-foot trench behind that house. The stitching hasn't been moved. The openings in the stitching haven't moved. Nothing was changed. Even after the stuff that I sent to Kevin, nothing changed. There was never any change made. So, sir, there were no changes made after I sent you the videos. I didn't even receive a response by email on the last video I sent you. I sent high-resolution stills and high-resolution videos showing the flooding, extensive flooding in the yards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here on behalf of the developer that can speak to this? I mean, I don't. Ron, you're the sole rep.
Apparently I drew the short straw. Ron Homeyer, Civil Engineering. Yeah. Sorry. I'm used to them being at the right level when I'm other places with other duties. Sorry. The conversation about the drainage, I'm assuming he's talking about houses on the west side of Carl Street or somehow are having water backing up in their yards, in the backyards. That all drains toward this property, so and this property hadn't had anything done to it in years, so I don't know why that would be backing up water on the west side of Carl Street. The drainage and everything on the east side of the Carl Street, where his house is located, is another project. Excuse me. Excuse me. And I thought they had all been taken care of. I hadn't heard any more from the city, and that happens to be another one of my projects. And so I'll be getting with the developer and the contractor and see if we can figure out why his lot, which is right next to a detention basin, is not draining into that basin like it should be. So, Yeah, this whole area, whole area drains through this property. I did the analysis, and because of the length and size of the drainage basin, if we included detention on this side, we would literally increase the flow, because when you put in detention, you reduce the flow by storing volume and then letting it out at a controlled rate, which then makes it last longer for the peak to get on out of the detention basin. And by delaying that peak, you allow the water from upstream to get down there at the same time, and then that they combine and increase rather than decrease. By not putting in detention, this water then runs off quicker, gets out of the way. The worst part of it, the highest runoff from it, gets out of the way before the water from literally a half mile upstream finally gets there and creates the worst peak. That is a floodplain that has been studied, and there's detailed study from 43 down to the state line as part of the city's floodplain or flood hazard zone mapping. And the proposal to this, which we analyzed at the 43 bridge, culvert, whatever you want to call it, we're not increasing it due to this development. As far as traffic, all I can say is a traffic signal probably at the Don Hill Road, Mount Olive intersection might reduce a lot of the people that are coming through Carl Street and out Lawless Road, because they would then be able to get out over there and not have to take these alternate routes. So, and because of the size of the project being more than 30 units, it has to have a second entrance, and that's the reason for the road going out to Highway 43. Was there anything else that I needed to address while I'm here?
And I think you did touch on this, Ron, was the flooding at the gentleman's property and behind his property. Is that the one that you had mentioned that you wasn't sure why it still hadn't been done, or did I misunderstand?
I assumed it had been done because, yes, he had brought concerns. Staff had brought them to my attention, got with the contractor and the developer, and like I said, I haven't heard anything in a while, so I just assumed it had been taken care of. But at the same time, his lot in particular should not have any drainage problems in the backyard, so his contractor apparently has done something that's not quite right and might need to move a pile of dirt here or there or something, and so I'll get with them and make sure that takes place.
Ron?
So it sounds like, Mr. Simpek, your issue is kind of separate from this specific development, if that's what I'm hearing, right? Because you're on the east side, is that right?
Yeah. My concern is it's just gonna
Push more water over.
Back.
Yeah. 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 And the traffic, yes.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, you've got other concerns?
I have a couple questions. Kevin, is any of that on North Mount Olive, where before it heads north on 43, is any of that within the city's jurisdiction as far as changing speed limits, or is everything we're talking about RDOT's jurisdiction?
Everything north of Sherry Whitlock is RDOT's jurisdiction. That's
Okay.
Highway 43.
Okay. And did I understand that we are contacting RDOT to ask for them to look at this? That's going to happen?
That's going to happen with the development of Carly Crossing. That's one of the requests that we'll make. They rarely, with Walmart basically being the only exception, they'll rarely change anything within their network for an incoming development until the traffic is actually there.
And we are going to ask them to reduce the speed limit there?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, we won't have control over whether they do or by how much.
But that's what we can do, right? All we can. Okay. I have another question. Mr. Guffey spoke about, he said there's almost like a river, right, that flows through there that gets really wide behind his house. He said there's a log jam and there's debris back there, and he's concerned about more debris. So I know that that's not in the city right now, if I understand right. Oh, it is in the city. Okay. Does this?
The ones on either side of us are not, but we are.
Okay. Does the city help with that debris or with the log jams that may slow down or stop the drainage there? Is there anything that we can do to help?
We do. I don't know about that crossing specifically, but that's something we'll look into.
We can look at that and see if we can.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, generally city policy is that if we have a drainage easement, then if it needs maintenance, then the city can do that. If there is no easement, if it's strictly private property, we do not use city resources in that circumstance.
Okay, thank you. Is there a drainage easement there that we're?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I apologize.
Is there any other questions or concerns from our commissioners? I see you all looking at your notes, and
I think a comment, I mean, in regards to Ms. Morris's comment about the density and the size of the development, I think, you know, by right, they're less dense than they could be for R2. I don't know if there's really not much else we could do, is there? I mean, by right, they can be more dense than they are.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's 2 to 6 units per acre for neighborhoods 1, and they're at 3.08, so they're just barely over the minimum, and they're nowhere near the maximum density.
I don't understand why we can't, I don't know why they can't look at it. Maybe they haven't thought of it. I mean, maybe they have, I don't know, but I just feel like that it's just too many houses just piled in there for the,
Ma- Ron, would you, I see you coming up here. I know you want to answer. Go for it, sir.
I will do my best. The staff asked that question of the developer. They considered it, and they chose to go the route they've chosen.
As long as it falls within the guidelines of the city planning codes, as long as everything falls within the guidelines of the city planning codes, there is no legal reason that we can reject this. I understand and I emphasize, and particularly the citizen who mentioned the cows, I'd like to have the cows back across my fence too. I had less flies when they were there. Seriously, they stayed on the cows and out of my yard.
And just to add, numerous lots in subdivisions, even Copperleaf, are 0.17 acre. And this would be about 0.33, so almost double the size. It wouldn't be 1 acre, it wouldn't be 5 acres, but the minimum lot size we have in some subdivisions that are pre-existing are much smaller.
Ma'am, would you come up to the podium? We'll allow you one more time, and then we're going to have to go. I understand, ma'am, but you need to come up once again. State your name and
Carolyn
address.
Holiday, 2100 North Carl. So when it rains, the water is running from Mount Olive north, and I have water running the back of my property, probably about 3 feet wide. But it's not real deep. But there's water running there too. So it's not, way down farther north, but it starts right up at Mount Olive, because it's kind of a slope.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin, not to harp on the drainage, but is this subject to the new guidelines that the board has been discussing as far as drainage goes? I mean, it looks, when you see this section in here of special flood hazard area, and you have lots completely covered in that, it makes you question, how are we addressing that to not see something 5 years down the road, or, you know, that kind of situation like we're seeing in many places right now from past developments?
Right. So, two, I guess, answers to that. First, I've notified all of the engineers in the area that have commonly done developments within Siloam Springs, and I'll be meeting with them here in about another week and a half to go over those requirements. And then starting June 1st, all submittals will fall under that. So the projects you review in July will come in with those new volume detention requirements. And then the second question for with the floodplain, that will have an impact on the elevation of that the houses can be constructed at. And then the developer and the engineer will also have to certify that they're not impacting the floodplain by whatever raising they have to do of the lots to get it above that elevation. So all that's involved kind of in the building permit
And
phase.
all that is okay? I mean, in 5 years, when we do have some torrential storm and that homeowner is coming into the city and saying, the water got up almost to my door, it was on my first 2 steps. Well, are they aware that their house is being built in a floodplain even though it's been raised up?
It would be tied to the plat, so they should be aware.
Yeah, it's
If you put that back up, the subdivision layout, can you do that?
just seems like a lot of lots right along those drain lines that are headaches that are being fought right now from previous developments, and it seems like we're asking for a lot of problems with some of that.
I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions, but when they elevate the lots, you're talking about they'll be elevating those lots we see in blue, right? Where are you telling me that's going to be? I don't understand. Yes, come back up. Yeah, I don't actually know, yeah.
So the lots adjacent to the floodplain, so these rectangle lots are green space, and they won't have homes constructed on them. The lots adjacent to it, kind of on here 3 and 5, I would expect to fall under that distinction. And then 57 and 58, these 2 lots here, since they're in the floodplain, that would certainly need to be looked at. But the floodplain will set the base finished floor elevation of all the houses in that vicinity.
What about the lots that run along that drainage, say like 59, 60, 10 and 11, 65, 66, 25? I mean, we're already hearing about problems over by that area.
Right, so let's see, 25 and 26 being kind of outside the floodplain, that would be determined by the drainage report. So the drainage report will also give elevations for these major channels through the site, and that would determine those home elevations. So even though they're not against the floodplain, if they're adjacent to any sort of drainage channel, that will have an impact on the finished floor elevation.
Commissioners, while he's up there, any others? Because of the nature of the game, unless there's anything that's against regulations, we know our duties. You can't, as long as it falls within city and planning and zoning requirements, you pretty much got to approve it. You can throw conditions in there. Based on that, if there are no other comments on PP 2302, I'll entertain a motion.
One comment before.
Okay.
This being a preliminary plat, before any final plat's approved, we'll see all the drainage reports and know how all that's gonna work, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we already have the drainage reports. That's part of the preliminary plat submittal. But you will see this project again as a final plat.
Unless it's identical to the preliminary plat, then it'll go directly to the board of directors for approval.
Any other questions or comments?
My only comment is I just feel like there's opportunity for improvement here. I think there's more conversations that need to be had about the density, about the development on to the west. A lot of these factors are outside of our control. Speed, density, things like that. But I wish the developer was here tonight to speak to some of these concerns. Ron, I appreciate you talking, but so that's my comment.
Commissioners, we need a motion on PP 2302.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve preliminary plat development permit PP 2302 with staff stated conditions.
I have a motion to approve PP 2302 with staff stated conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on PP 2302. Roll call.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion is approved. It will go before the Board of Directors on June the 6th, 2023. Next item on tonight's agenda is board and staff approved permits. You've all received copies of them. Are there any questions or comments on the staff approved permits? With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This Planning Commission Board of Commissioners is adjourned.